Portland's new DP, Brian Fernandez, has been flying, and while the rest of the Eastern Conference has been slacking, the New York Red Bull have been shooting up the table. And honestly, can we just give Carlos Vela the MLS MVP trophy already? We covered all of that and the rest of this past week's MLS action. This is just Offside. What is up? Welcome to Just Offside, the weekly MLS show where we take your comments and talk about them. My name is Louie and my life partner Mikey is still not here this week, but hopefully by next week he will be back gracing your screens with his beautiful face. But before we get into your comments from last week, if you're new here, this is Trebl and we are a channel for Americans who love soccer by Americans who love soccer. We post new episodes of Just Outside every single week, so make sure you come over here and hit that subscribe button and help us get to 500 subscribers, please. We also post a ton of different videos about American soccer on our channel as well, so go check those out and make sure to hit that subscribe button. But alright, let's move along to your comments from last week. Ben Righam says, his record may not matter, but it sure does matter. I'm a big old dummy and forgot to check spelling on the title for last week's episode when I uploaded it. Casey Kelsey Chris says, if Landon had half the work rate and professionalism as Wando, we would be talking about an international star and not a national star. And you know, I think you make a massive point here. I do think that Landon Donovan could have achieved so much more in his career if he had just stepped out of his MLS shell. I know he had a couple of stints in Europe, but I almost would have loved to have seen a full season of him in Europe at his peak to see what he would have been able to do. And while last week I didn't mean for it to come out so negative about Chris Wondolowski, I was honestly just comparing the two players in terms of their impact on the United States soccer landscape. Our boy Brad Jr. 10 says, the month of May has been scheduled incredibly poor. Teams have been traveling across the country and then have to travel back a week later. MLS needs to schedule better for sure. Absolutely, Brad. It's the thing that's been driving me the most insane this whole season about how the MLS's poor scheduling has been creating some really unnecessary problems for a lot of teams. And you know, like I said before, this is something that's really holding back the MLS from really achieving the heights that it says that it wants to achieve. But alrighty guys, those were your comments from last week. Make sure you're leaving your comments down below in this video from any of the things we talk about during this episode. And also, if you guys are watching the MLS this coming weekend and you want to include some of your comments from this upcoming weekend, come back to the video and leave your comments down below. That way we can talk about it a little bit more in real time, if you will. But alright, enough of all that. Let's get to what you guys came here to see. The Portland Timbers capped off an absolutely grueling 12-game road trip to start off this season with a 3-1 win over the Philadelphia Union, who were tied for first in the Eastern Conference leading up to this game. It was Portland's new DP, Brian Fernandez, who absolutely stole the show against Philly. He scored 2 and absolutely bossed the field during the entire game. Fernandez, who was the second leading goal scorer of Liga MX's Clausura in the spring, kept his form going with his new club Portland, and he scored 3 goals in his first 5 shots in just a little over 90 minutes played at about 115 minutes. That's like a game and a half, and this man has scored 3 goals. And man, honestly, it should be pretty scary for the rest of the league if this Portland team starts to click. A trio of Diego Valeri, Sebastian Blanco, and Brian Fernandez is enough to wreak havoc on any team in the MLS. But getting back to the game, Philly was a little disappointing during this game. Trebl did score a weird goal to bring it 2-1 just before missing an absolute sitter to level things up for Philly, and that mistake would be crucial as Portland have Diego Valeri, who on his good day is basically a cheat code. He scored a low curling shot to make it 3-1, and that was enough to seal off the win for Portland. They're going back home to a newly renovated Providence Park. They have a brilliant new DP in Brian Fernandez. It's really gotten me wondering, can Brian Fernandez be the catalyst that really starts to get this team clicking? Can he unlock this side and possibly get them back to an MLS Cup final? They do have a month of home games where they can possibly pick up a ton of points as long as their forward line starts to click. Really, I'm really sorry to say this, but I'm starting to think you guys aren't for real. That Trebl miss epitomized what Philly has been kind of going through over the past couple of weeks. You guys have had some really good chances to capitalize and push yourselves into first place by yourselves above DC United, but you just seem to keep missing those opportunities. Philly needs to be ruthless and put pedal to the metal when they see opportunities to strike like this. Had Trebl made that second goal, the game could have been completely different and Philly could be currently sitting in first in the Eastern Conference. Instead, now they're hovering just below DC United, who haven't even been looking that convincing themselves. While I'm not writing off Philly completely, I think they need to pick it up and in a big way in the next couple of weeks. Hey guys, let me know, am I being too harsh on Philly? Are you convinced that they can be real contenders come playoff time? Moving along to our next game, Sporting Kansas City hosted the Seattle Sounders. After suffering a brutal period filled with injuries, expectations weren't really all that high for Sporting Kansas City. After all, they hadn't won a game in almost 2 months at this point. Well, good thing for SKC that Johnny Russell does not give one single fuck about any of that. Russell scored an awe-inspiring hat trick to ensure that SKC beat Seattle Sounders 3-2. Honestly, all 3 goals from Johnny Russell were phenomenal, but the darling of the bunch has to be that second goal. The Scottish Messi single-handedly weaved through 5 different Seattle Sounders defenders and no one could stop him. He danced right by everybody and slotted one into the low corner. It was a beautiful, beautiful run and it was a brilliant finish. Seattle tried to claw back into this game and they got a goal through Ruidíaz to make it 2-1, but Johnny Russell just answered that with his 3rd goal to seal off SKC's victory and to finish off Seattle. I should mention that Seattle did score another goal, but it sounded better when I said that Johnny Russell finished them off, so sue me. Overall, though, this win must have felt so good for the SKC faithful who have had to endure some pretty rough couple of months here. And while this is just one win and they are still facing a mountain of injuries, can this win be what starts to get SKC out of this funk and really lift them back up to the heights that they were at last year? DC United visited the New England Revolution, who are apparently still a soccer team. DC have been having a rough go of it lately, and they haven't really been looking like themselves. And it really didn't get much better for them in Foxborough. The Revs probably thought they were going to walk away with all 3 points after scoring in the second half, and if it weren't for Wayne Rooney, they would have. Rooney scored in the 90th minute to level things up for DC, and the draw propelled them to first above Philly after their loss. And while they do sit at the top of the Eastern Conference, it still just doesn't feel right for DC. Like I said, they've been struggling a bit, and if it weren't for Rooney, I really don't know where they would be at this point in the season. Lucho Acosta has basically fallen off the face of the earth, and Paul Arriola is getting shuffled around the front line into different positions game in and game out. But despite all of this, they are still sitting in first place. But just how secure is that first place spot for them? Is there anybody that can actually challenge them for first place? Should DC be worried about a prolonged slump, or does it not really matter because the East seems pretty weak this year? Or as we like to say, the East is trash. And as for the Revs, they are weirdly unbeaten in the last 3 games since firing Brad Friedel. And they have risen from the bottom of the depths of the Eastern Conference from 12th place to the dizzying heights of 11th place. And who knows, maybe they can keep getting enough draws to move them up to 10th place by the end of the season. Moving along, LAFC continued to look like the absolute best team in all of the MLS this past weekend with a 4-2 win over Montreal. Of course, one of those goals had to come from the most handsomest Mexican man to ever grace a soccer pitch, Carlos Vela. Vela scored one and assisted one in this game and helped his team absolutely dominate Montreal. The final scoreline doesn't tell the whole story, as LAFC were up 4-0 before Montreal scored 2 consolation goals late. Vela's goal was a great run by him and a beautiful through ball to find him when he just calmly slotted it home. And alright, straight up, real quick, can we just give Carlos Vela the league MVP trophy right now? Jesus, this man has been the best player in the MLS by a mile all season. He's got 15 goals and 9 assists, and he's currently on track to break both Josef Martinez's scoring record and Carlos Valderrama's assist record if he keeps up this pace. And luckily for him and LAFC, he won't be going anywhere during the summer, as he will not be playing for Mexico in the Gold Cup, meaning that he can put all of his efforts into continuing this fantastic run of form. And honestly, I might actually put some money on him to break either one or both of those records. Moving along to that other team from LA, the Galaxy were in Disneyland to play Orlando, and we're actually able to sneak off with the 1-0 win after a brilliant goal from Jonathan Dos Santos. But honestly, I think Orlando should have won that game. They were absolutely battering the Galaxy. And they really should have at least drawn the game when they were awarded a penalty. Nani stepped up and had his penalty saved again. And I really don't know why Orlando is still allowing him to take penalties. Someone should look at Nani and just be like, hey man, I get it. You're a baller. You're phenomenal. But we need someone else to take PKs, because he has taken 3 and only converted 1. And that's really bad for a team struggling like Orlando, who needs all of the goals it can get. The LA Galaxy were without their entire team in Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who was still serving his suspension, but also Orlando were missing Dom Dwyer, who was also suspended. Ultimately though, it really feels like a missed opportunity for Orlando, who should have capitalized on this game and at least took something away from it. But moving along to our next game, San Jose versus Toronto FC. Whoa, it really looks like Chris Wondolowski wasn't happy to just break Landon Donovan's record, he wanted to extend it. He scored 2 goals to propel San Jose past Toronto, and in doing so became the only player in MLS history to score 150 regular season goals. I didn't want last week's episode to sound so negative on Wondo. He has been phenomenal throughout his whole career. I just wish that he had stepped a little bit outside of the MLS bounds, or maybe done a little bit more with the US men's national team. Similar sentiments that I have for Landon Donovan. But overall, the man is a legend of the game. People love him and he is an absolute class professional. So again, please don't take it the wrong way. I really do love Wondo. I just want more from American soccer. But back to this game, Toronto were without their star man, Alejandro Pozuelo, and have been hitting a rough patch after starting the season off pretty well. As for the San Jose team, I'm really starting to think that they're not gonna go away this season. They seem like they're gonna stick around and give plenty of teams trouble. And while I don't know where their season's going to end, I am excited as hell to watch this ride. Whoa, stop, hold up, stop everything. The world is officially ending, folks. Not only did the Colorado Rapids win a soccer game, but they've won 2 in a row? The Colorado Rapids beat Columbus Crew 3-2, bringing their grand total of wins on the season to 2. It's been actually very interesting to see Colorado finally start to pick up a couple of wins, especially because at the beginning of the season, I didn't think they had a terrible team on paper. Of course, they're not they were never looking to be MLS Cup contenders, but I didn't think they would be so bad. So it is cool to see them start to pick up a little bit. How many wins do you think Colorado is going to end the season with? But as for the Crew, who at one point were challenging for the top of the Eastern Conference standings earlier in the season, they have been absolutely free-falling. They have lost 8 of their last 9 and have been outscored 18-7 during that run, bringing them all the way down to 9th in the Eastern Conference table. Yikes. What is going on with the Crew? I get it, Greg Berhalter left, but Caleb Porter's a pretty solid coach too, so what's going on? The New York Red Bull traveled to Ohio to play FC Cincy. Don't look now, but the New York Red Bull have been sneakily shooting up the Eastern Conference standing. Over the last 7 games, last year's Supporter Shield winners have been quietly putting together an impressive run of games. They have won 5, drawn 1, and lost 1. And that has been enough to see them climb all the way up to 3rd. And while the Red Bull haven't exactly looked like themselves over this past run, it's just been exciting to see them be able to grind out wins. And while this win did come against FC Cincy, it still shouldn't take away from what they've been doing over the last several weeks. As for FC Cincy, for the 2nd straight week, they have shown a lot of fight and they've really tried to get themselves going. But unfortunately, for the 2nd week in a row, it just wasn't good enough. And unfortunately, they fell 2-0 to the Red Bull. A lot of that does come down to Luis Robles, who was an absolute wall in front of that Red Bull goal. It must be frustrating for those FC Cincy supporters who they fired their head coach and things haven't really gotten all that much better. And so taking into consideration everything that's happened in this first season in the MLS for FC Cincy, what does success even look like at this point? What needs to happen so that at the end of the year, you guys can look back and go, you know what, we had our troubles, but it was a successful season overall? Because as of right now, it just feels pretty disappointing. And moving along to our final game of this week, after climbing up the Eastern Conference standings, Atlanta United has stumbled a little bit as they went to Salt Lake City to face RSL. Salcedo scored a beautiful curling shot after he cut in on his right and sent one flying past Brad Guzan to give RSL the 1-0 lead. And it wouldn't be until the final moments of the game before things really got spicy. A little bit before the 80th minute, Justin Merrim found a surging Josef Martinez in the box to level things up for Atlanta. And Atlanta were probably thinking, great, 1 point away from home, that's great for us. Unfortunately, in the dying seconds, and I mean literally the dying seconds of the game, Savarino fought off a defender and in basically the last kick of the game just hoofed one towards goal. And luckily for him, that shot went flying into the back of the net to give RSL the 2-1 win over Atlanta. Now, I don't want to take anything away from that goal because it was a beautiful shot, What I am saying though is that it was honestly the last kick of the game and he was just trying to just hit it towards goal and hope for whatever happened. Luckily it went in and it was still a beautiful, beautiful goal. For Atlanta, that must have been incredibly frustrating as they thought they were gonna walk away with at least a point from this game, which would have been pretty good. You know, away from home against a decent RSL side, it would have been a good point to take back home. But nope. It got me thinking, should Atlanta maybe find some solace in this loss? Because, you know, it did take 2 worldy goals to break down their defense. But then I kept thinking about it. Atlanta United are defending MLS Cup champions. They can't have that mentality of, but at least we fought hard and we almost won. No, Atlanta should be winning these games. This win extended RSL's win streak to 3 wins in a row, and they've won 5 out of their last 7. After a slow start to the season, RSL really seems like they're picking it up. But alright guys, there you have it, another episode of Just Offside. Make sure you're leaving your comments down below so that we can feature you in next week's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you could hit that like button and hit that subscribe button right next to it. You can find us on all of our social medias at Trebl Soccer, as well as on our website at www.treblesoccer.com. We post blog articles there every single week about all crazy things in soccer from an American perspective. That's it for me. We'll catch you next week. Hey, did you know that the Women's World Cup is kicking off soon? Yeah, it is, and they have some really dope jerseys. Check out this video that we made where we rank the top 5 best Women's World Cup jerseys from this summer's tournament. If you enjoy podcasts, we have our own podcast called Culture FC where we talk about all of the things surrounding the beautiful game that make it so great. And we dive deep into a lot of the problems plaguing American soccer today. So make sure you're coming over here and checking that out as well. Thank you for watching.